I used to be awful with money, like overdraft every month, awful. But these 5 simple habits quietly made me wealthier than most people I know. I didn't grow up with money, but I did 5 small things that made all the difference. Now, you don't need to be good with numbers. You don't need to follow boring budgets or give up the stuff that you enjoy. You don't have to chase crypto or know anything about investing. No, this is not about skipping lattes and stopping buying avocados on toast. This is about 5 moves that will buy you actual freedom and wealth, not just saving a few quid here and there. So we're going to talk about what the one money habit is that made me richer without earning more. How did I go from bad with money to wealthier than most people I know without cutting back, like living on rice and beans and living like a monk? And which small shift made the biggest difference to my bank account and why almost no one talks about it? So let's start with the elephant in the room, saving. So if you even have any savings, that already makes you wealthier than the average person. A staggering 40% of people have absolutely nothing saved, with the next 10 to 15% having less than £1,000 put away. The problem though is that you can't save your way to being wealthy. Now, I used to not save at all, but I would constantly be reminded by people that I should save money and I should put money away. And eventually, after I got my debt and my credit cards, my loans, my missed payments under control, more on that later, I started putting money away. Now, that actually started with literally just 1p a day. There's like a saving challenge where you increase what you put away by 1 pence per day. So on day 365 of the challenge, you put away £3.65. Now, eventually this adds up to around 668 quid, which is a great place to start. But this entire mindset came crashing down when I learned what inflation was. You are told to save for the future, or especially a rainy day. The problem is that the future is more expensive than today, or rather, more accurately, your money is worth less in the future. So in 2024 alone, inflation was at about 4%, meaning that if a chocolate bar was £1 in 2023, by the end of 2024, it was £1 4 pence. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but scale that up to the value of a house or a car or a lot of debt. Inflation is actually a measure of how much your money is worth. As in, if I had £100 this year, it's literally worth or has the buying power of £96 in 2024. You can literally buy less stuff tomorrow with the money you have today. Now, yes, some savings accounts offer interest, which means the amount of money should go up. But have you ever actually looked at how much interest you get? The average interest rate on savings accounts in the UK at least is like 2%. Now, some are higher, some are much, much less. That means if you had £100 saved, at the end of the year, the interest gives you £2 if it was a 2% interest rate, so that's £102. But the actual value of that £102, the buying power, assuming a 4% inflation rate, means your real world money value is closer to £98.08. So while your account shows £102, you can really only buy what 98 quid would have bought you a year ago. Now, I know this sounds insane, and if you're not good with numbers, it can be very overwhelming and confusing. And what's worse is that the consumer price index gives an idea of inflation at around 4%, but many economists put inflation closer to 10%. And this is where things get really awful, because when the news says inflation has fallen, what they really mean is that the rate at which your money is becoming less valuable is slowing down. We hear inflation is falling, but what that actually means is that inflation is falling from 10% to 4%. It's like saying a car is slowing when really it's just going from 100 miles an hour to 80 miles an hour. Now, when I learned this, it sent me into a deep spiral of depression and panic. What was even the point of saving? And that's when my stepdad, who was very good with money, taught me a very, very valuable lesson. What he taught me is that banks, pensions, savings, investments, blah, 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 they all give interest based on the profits that they make from loans, investing, bonds, etc. For example, A savings account might offer 1.8% return a year. That 1.8% is paid from where banks usually invest your savings in low risk things like loans or government bonds. They literally loan your money out to individuals and businesses. When those businesses pay it back with an interest rate, some of that comes back towards you. Pensions and mutual funds, they go a little bit wider. They invest in things like stocks and shares and markets. Either way, the return you get is a slice of what they earn with your money. Now, if they've chosen the right investments, they'll make a profit and they'll share that with you. Look, I've simplified this a little bit, but that is the general gist of it. Your private pension is literally the same thing. They pool all the money together from all of their pensions. They spread it across multiple shares and stocks and funds, and based on the profit they make, they give you a small cut minus some kind of admin fee or transaction handling fee. There is a catastrophic problem with this model though. Fund managers, as in the people who are paid to invest your money in your pension, are wrong more than 50% of the time. What that means is that you, literally you, if you took that same money that you were giving to a private pension company, you could make better decisions on where to invest your money using the flip of a coin. Now, I was very lucky. My stepdad took the time to show me how to invest money. It's actually way, way faster and easier and more simple and less stressful than I thought it would be. I thought it would be like day trading and like analyzing candlestick graphs and stuff, but it's not that at all. What I did is I went away and I learned everything I could about the stock market and shares and mutual funds. And basically, I now use an app from a bank in the UK called Hargreaves Lansdown. I put money away each month. That's kind of my saving. And then that money gets spread across a few different funds that I like. I don't expect massive returns like immediately. This isn't day trading. But I also don't have massive losses immediately, because this isn't day trading. Now, over time, and that is the key, time, my investments have grown. I remember the first time I saw a 1% return in a month on a £500 account. And from that moment, I was hooked. I stopped saving and I started investing. And as I became more confident and I read more, I tried new things. I invested in Nvidia before they went nuts. Not because I'm a financial genius, I just read lots and I thought I could do a better job than a coin flip. Now, the real flex isn't having money sitting still, it's making money that makes money. Now, I do actually have a checklist if you're running a business on how to hit $10,000 a month. It's a real simple checklist that just makes sure, do you have everything in place to be able to make 10K a month? If you want that, go to use the link down in the description below or maybe in the comments, and that will give you the checklist completely for free. And it's everything I've learned starting multiple 6 and 7 figure businesses on how to hit your first 10K a month. Now, honestly, this next thing I do or did was so simple, it almost felt like a cheat code. It was actually easier to make more money doing this. Now, I don't know about you, but at the start of every month, running a business, it kind of felt like I was starting from zero. I knew I'd have bills and expenses and outgoings this month, but I didn't know if or when I would have any income. Because my business focused so much on landing new clients, my ability to make money relied on how much work I found that month. Now, it just seemed insane to me that I knew how many expenses I'd have that month, but I didn't know how much I'd be earning. I was also caught in the trap of thinking I needed to chase two things: more clients and higher project payments. Now, to me, those things equaled growth, partly because the communities that I was in, that's what they valued. Those were the things that I could brag about to them, and it's what other people bragged about to me. I'd also be obsessed with working with big or large clients or even name brands, and I'd often get them, work on them, and still be in the red by the time the end of the month rolled around. That's even if they paid me within 30, 60, or 90 days. And so I did something that at the time basically felt like business suicide. My time was getting pulled in so many different directions, from getting clients, from selling, marketing, running the business, admin, financing, delivering the actual work. I was running myself into the ground and I was broke. So I knew something had to change, and drastically. What that meant is that I moved from trying to land bigger and bigger projects and getting more money sort of in a lump sum payment, and I moved towards a longer term, sustainable, recurring revenue model. I remember telling my team and a few of them asking like, well, how are we going to get paid? And I'll admit it was very tough at first. We sold $97 and $497 subscriptions. The first one that came through felt awesome. But honestly, the moment I thought, I know I've done the right thing here, was when that same first customer paid again at the start of the next month. I quickly learned that it took way less effort to keep a customer than to try and find a new one. So the effort I'd put into finding clients stayed essentially the same, but month on month, our recurring revenue slowly went up and up and up. And what made the real difference was working on scalable recurring revenue. You see, anyone can sell a $2,000 a month subscription and work themselves to the bone delivering on that. I see a lot of people do that with retainers. And it traps people because now they essentially do have a stable income, but they're working all the hours they can just to get that small amount. It kind of traps them from scaling out and making more money. There's literally a limit to the amount of money they can make because they tie that recurring revenue to their hours. What I really wanted was income that was recurring, that didn't add to my workload. So we built out a custom CRM. We white labeled software like High Level. We added a few custom components. I hired a support team who took care of all of our customer tickets and our issues. I bought some training programs that showed new clients how to get the most out of their subscription. Now, honestly, you don't need half of that stuff. If you do want some behind the scenes stuff on how we built a $10,000 a month business from scratch, I have actually got a cheat sheet or some guides down below that you can access for free. I'll make sure to put the link in the description where you can find out more. Slowly but surely, we built a solid 5-figure a month recurring income stream that was scalable. Now, I've never particularly believed in the concept of passive income. I think it all takes work to set up. The only true passive income is being gifted like £1 million and living off the interest. But scalable recurring revenue is without question the next best thing. So what happens when your clients leave you, Mike? Or what happens if you have a subscription and it breaks or whatever? It's a good question. This is why I believe that having only one source of income is a massive point of failure. Basically, I have multiple sources of income now. Now, the key is that word now. At the start, I absolutely did not, and I am a firm believer in focusing on one thing until it works. The journey was this. 1, create a stable income selling a recurring revenue subscription product. 2, writing books and selling them online. 3, creating YouTube content and monetizing that. I was only able to do 2 and 3 after I had done 1. Imagine entering 3 marathons and trying to run them all at the same time. This is what a lot of people do when it comes to multiple sources of income. They call it diversification, which I also think is a bit of a buzzword. The cold hard reality is that you have to take a risk and build one source of stable, scalable, recurring revenue first, then move into other areas. Otherwise, you just won't have the focus or the energy to give the new projects. I knew as soon as we hit $20,000 a month that we could start advertising. At $10,000 a month, we could start releasing new products. It is the slow way, it is the patient way, but there isn't a fast way. Now, if something happens that can wipe out a stable, long-term, scalable, recurring revenue income source, it will also destroy 3 or 4 smaller, less stable, less mature income sources. If you build something solid that doesn't rely on you and then move on to the next project, you're going to find it easier over the long term to build multiple sources of income. Right, so this next habit has saved me tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of pounds, right? Most financial advice is written by people who want to sound smart. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have a financial product to sell you. But most financial advice is given by people with absolutely zero real world experience. Just look at me. Joking. Kind of. It's easy for me to say I don't follow bad advice. But the question is then, well, how do I know what bad financial advice is, Mike? And that's the point. You don't. I've always had a mindset that it's more important to get it right than to be right. And what that means is that if I learn something from someone, I'll test it. If it doesn't work, I move on and forget it. Making money costs money. Learning about money costs money, although not as much as you might think. And yes, you will make mistakes. I have. I remember panicking and taking out a big chunk of my investments in cash when COVID hit because someone I followed, who I trusted, told everyone we need to hold on to physical cash because ATMs weren't going to work, banks were going to collapse, blah, 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 blah. Now, that advice alone, that bad advice, has cost me thousands and thousands of pounds. What I don't understand is when people lose money based on advice from gurus and experts and then insisting on defending what they did when the evidence shows that it was wrong. Or worse, defending that person, that moron who gave them bad advice. Look, I know we don't like admitting when we've made mistakes. I've easily lost $100,000 through hiring the wrong people and having a business completely implode within 7 months or something. It happens. We all make mistakes. The difference is when we learn from it. We're afraid of what people will think of us if we admit we're wrong. Here's the thing. I've been wrong about money more times than I've been right. I've made atrocious financial decisions. Some based on what I thought or saw, some based on experts and gurus. And yes, I've had people say, I told you so, when a certain investment or a money move didn't pay off. It doesn't matter. Move on. The biggest drain on your finance is listening to people who keep losing you money. Now, I will say there are some red flags to look for when it comes to financial advice. One, if they tell you to buy something specific, like a specific stock or a fund or an investment, that's usually a bad sign. If they're legit and they're smart and they're actually financially competent, they'll spend more time telling you what to look for yourself. Two, they tell you that there is only one way to wealth and it just so happens to be their way, right? There are so many ways to get rich that you shouldn't fear on missing out on opportunities to make money. There is no one way. They make a bad move and they lose a lot of money. Now, this sounds obvious, but I see so many people continue to follow people and take advice from people who literally repeatedly prove over and over that they lose not only their own money, but other people's money as well, your money as well. There's enough financial guru dickheads out there that you can just chop and change. If you want at least a dickhead who gives you good advice, just do that. Just at least don't follow a financial guru, bro, marketer, dickhead who loses you money. Number 4, this is important. Their advice is boring. This is probably the single best indicator of whether someone's advice can actually make you wealthy. If they need to tell you that this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme, it usually is. Anyone who tells you how fast some of their clients made money and you are feeling financial pressure to make that same amount in the same time is probably bollocks. Real financial freedom, true wealth, comes with time, patience, and doing the right, boring thing over and over and over and over and over. You can't outsource or skip push-ups. You've got to do the slow, boring work. Now, this last habit made me realize just how wealthy I am. What I used to do was to try to put money away and then I would overspend on something. And then I'd have to dip into my savings to cover those costs. Now, I got into a lot of credit card debt. I started my business with tens of thousands of pounds in debt. I missed payments, I didn't pay bills, I had an atrocious credit score. Now, it turns out that what I was doing was buying things that I thought would make me happy or at least show that I'm successful. See, I came from an environment where what you had and how expensive the stuff you owned is would determine how valuable you are in society. You needed to have a nice car, a big house, a good job, an expensive watch. You could say that I was trained to buy positive judgment from people. If I spent money on things, people would like me. Now, this will no doubt come as a massive life-changing shock to you, but none of that turned out to be true. I didn't know that. I had to learn that things don't make you happy. I'm very lucky. My wife is very good with money. She's very sensible. She's helped me understand the value of stuff. And more than that, being valuable or even liked in itself is a completely worthless, meaningless pursuit. So the idea of buying things to improve the likelihood that I'll be liked, what's the point in being liked? Even that part is completely meaningless. Instead, what I learned is that naive adolescent notions of wealth are everywhere. Really quick story. I went to give a talk at a school recently and they said, this is Mike Killen. He was on YouTube. He runs his own business. And one of the kids was like, "Are you a millionaire?" And I was like, "Well, no, I'm not actually." And they kind of like, well, there's a bunch of YouTubers who make more money than you. So what's the point in your advice?" Immediately I was like, well, I need to defend myself. And then I thought, this kid is like a child. What does he know about money? Why am I trying to live up to his notion of what wealth or success was? So in the end, sort of after calming myself down quickly, I was like, "You're absolutely right. I'm a complete failure. Does anyone else have any questions?" And we just kind of moved on. It was interesting. I felt myself getting pulled back into very, very childish ideas of what it means or looks like to be successful or wealthy. Somehow, for some reason, displaying how much money you've spent is a sign of how much money you have, which seems completely mental to me now, because the money I have in the bank is way more valuable than being seen as successful by other people. I regularly say this to people when they kind of understand how much money I make. They're like, "Well, why haven't you got this? Why don't you buy a bigger house or a nicer car?" And I'm like, so you think the best way for me to show how wealthy I am is to give away most of my wealth? Now, looking back now, almost everyone I knew had this kind of mindset that things determined your value, or that it was important to look wealthy and rich by buying expensive things. And the funny thing is, they were all broke all the time. None of them had any money. The irony is now they come to me to borrow money and they all complained constantly that they never had any. The solution of stop buying things then seems literally counterintuitive to them, because in their eyes, if you stop buying things, then you won't appear wealthy and rich. And I'd be like, but you're not wealthy or rich because you keep giving your money away. Look, it boils down to this. Wealth isn't measured in pounds or dollars. It's actually measured in time. A sign of wealth is how long you can live your life, pay your bills, and do what you want without working. You don't acquire $1,000 worth of wealth. You acquire 1,000 days of wealth. I now can work as much or as little as I want. My wife booked some time away and we just went away somewhere recently. I can take the time away from work and know that the money works out. Now, I've got friends with bigger houses, newer cars, nicer clothes, but they have to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, more even. The interest on their debt to fuel a lifestyle that isn't even that desirable grows faster than their income. I've had friends who have boasted about a $1 million a year turnover business only to declare bankruptcy months later simply because they were spending 1.1 million. Yes, people like this wanker and that will say that you're not a success or that you're a fraud even because you don't give your money away as soon as you get it. But the goal is time freedom, not an arbitrary financial number that other people say is a measure of success. Don't work on being liked or admired or valued, work on being free. Now, I have a very simple $150,000 passive income funnel that you can look at here, where I explain exactly how I make six figures completely without working using this exact funnel formula. It doesn't rely on ads. You don't have to be an expert. You can be an absolute beginner. But watch this. And what's crazy is it's only 3 pages long.